Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head over to Korea once again for the first time in what feels like a good long while. Now, we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel a couple of times before. These guys are really quite interesting because they're a very well respected and pioneering brewery within the Korean craft beer scene, which is in itself quite new in comparison to other places, but they have been starting to get their beers out there a little bit more in recent times, which is great to see because there are some great craft beers to be had in Korea. So I recommend that you check those out. But the beer that we're going to have a look at today is a style that I have tried from this brewery before, quite a popular style of beer at the moment, of course, and one that I know this brewery can do very, very well. And it's also part of a series of beers that these guys do, which has been very well received, and also one of their latest releases here in Hong Kong as well. So needless to say, I'm very, very curious to see what this beer is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head to South Korea, like I said. We're going to go to Seoul, and to be specific, we're going to go to the Gimpo area, which is in the northwestern part of the city. That happens to be home to the wonderful Craft Bros Brewery, and this particular beer is part of their City of Double series. So this one is called Walk. It comes in at 8.1% ABV, and this is a New England Hazy Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA. So yeah, this is another beer that I picked up at the wonderful Gur Beer in the One Mall in Chimshatchery in Kowloon here in Hong Kong. They've always got a great selection of beers, but they get Korean stuff every so often, and I just happened to go on a day where there was some of that. But this beer is very, very fresh. I'm filming this one for you on the 15th of September 2024, and this one was canned on the 9th of September 2024. So that's pretty impressive for an import beer here in Hong Kong. So yeah, I'd be very curious to know how they did that actually, but I'll make sure to put the link to their Facebook page and Instagram for you in the video description below, but make sure you go and check them out if you are visiting here, of course. But yeah, really cool to feature some more Korean beer for you here on the channel. So let's crack on with this one then and see how we go. So as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Craft Bros Brewery before, and we will no doubt add more to that list at some point in the near future because these guys do make their way to here to Hong Kong every so often. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and do remember that you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, province, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Korean playlist along with a number of other things. That's being added to whenever I get the opportunity, and I am very interested in Korean craft beer, so I hope more regularly. But do make sure you check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well, because there are some very interesting things on the channel these days. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit about Craft Bros Brewery once again. So, as I mentioned to you earlier, Craft Bros Brewery are based in the Gimpo area in the northwestern part of Seoul in South Korea, and this company was founded by Kang Ki-moon, who has quite an interesting background. So Kang had been the editor of the Beer Post magazine in South Korea, and he also ran a bottle shop and a beer import company which he established back in 2014. So he was apparently inspired by the drink logo slogan which he saw abroad, mainly in America and in other places, and because of this he established a tap room in the Sorry area called Can Maker by Craft Bros, and that started back in 2017. And here he had the vision of selling locally produced beers in cans, which was actually quite difficult in Korea at the time due to the laws. But this vision transformed a little, and Kang switched his attention to founding a brewery, which he did in 2019, and that was of course Craft Bros Brewery. So Craft Bros are known for having been quite innovative within the Korean craft beer scene over the years, and they were the first Korean craft brewery to can their beers, and apparently it was legal to sell beer in plastic bottles but not cans for a period of time, and that's certainly what I saw back in 2019 when I was there. But they also helped push changes to a number of the alcohol laws in Korea, noticeably the ones that affected the production of fruit and sour beers. Apparently, if a beer was more than 20% composed of fruit, then it couldn't legally be classified as a beer, and this meant that you had to get separate licenses and equipment to actually brew things like smoothie sours and kettle sours and stuff like this. But this law has now been revised, and the limit is now 50%. But the brewery itself can be found in the Gimpo area, as I mentioned earlier. 2020 saw them export their beer for the first time, and apparently the volume of exported beer has continued to grow over the last few years, and their beer has been reaching several countries across Asia and has gone as far as Europe. Maybe some of it's reached North America. I had heard rumours of that recently. But in 2023, they also added a distillery to the company, and the first whiskey will be released in 2026. So I'm quite curious to see what that's going to be like, because some of the Korean whiskies are pretty damn good in my experience. But like I said, these guys have been very, very pioneering when it comes to affecting the laws in Korea. They've done lots of different styles of beer, but they are a very solid all-round brewery as far as I can see. As of September 2024, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 170 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and if you look through the list of those, they've produced a lot of IPAs, yes, but they do a wide variety of other things as well. So yeah, definitely one of the Korean craft brews that you really need to check out if you're interested in exploring the craft beer scene there. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about Craft Bros Brewery for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's go on and have a little look at the beer itself. So as you can maybe tell, this one is a slightly bigger can. This is a half litre, 500 millilitres. But yeah, like I said, it's part of the City of Double series that Craft Bros Brewery do. And this series seems to be a bunch of 8.1% New England Hazy IPAs. And they change the hop bills. Sometimes they add a little bit of fruit into them and things like that. But when I was looking through the Untappd list, there were quite a few beers within this particular series. So yeah, maybe we'll need to revisit the series in the future and try the latest ones at that point in time. But yeah, plain silver top on the can here. As I said, 500 milliliter can, this one. This cost me 85 Hong Kong dollars, which is about £8.50 sterling. Somewhere in the region of like, you know, €9, $10 American, something like that. Craft beer is of course a little bit more expensive here in Hong Kong because the wages are higher, and you know, it is Asia. Craft beer is just more expensive here. But yeah, like I said, City of Double. This one is the Wok. It's got, so the full name of this beer is City of Double Wok. This one comes in at 8.1% ABV, as do all of the beers in this series, but it's been hopped with Citra and Nelson Sauvin. We know these hops quite well. Citra is of course from the US, 14% alpha acid. In a New England IPA, it's going to give you that lovely juicy mango with a little bit of peach and then some kind of lemony limey characteristics. Nelson Sauvin is of course the classic New Zealand hop, 16% alpha acid, and that's going to give you a kind of white green grapey gooseberry sort of flavour. Citra and Nelson Sauvin is of course quite a classic mixture of hops. You know, some quite often you'll see a bit of Mosaic or Galaxy mixed in with that as well. But yeah, 8.1% New England Hazy Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA from South Korea. Very well established brewery in South Korea, that Craft Bros Brewery. Let's crack this one open then and see what it's going to have in store for us. Very curious about this. So there we go. I need to get over to South Korea and do a little bit of out and about filming. We did get a few things done when I was there back in 2019. Meisterly Brewery, Tetrapod and Wild Wave, to name a few. But yeah, there have been a few interesting things have opened up since then that we need to go and check out as well. And of course, there's been the upgrades to the industry like cold chain and canning and stuff like this too, which has been really interesting to see. So yeah, we've got maybe about 75% of the beer out and into the glass at the moment, but you can see that when we poured this one, it poured with about a half finger of a frothy, I would say perfect white head. That has faded away very, very quickly though, just to leave a kind of thinner, fluffier layer at the top of the beer and a nice foamy ring around the edge of the glass there. So I'll just let you have a little quick look at that. You can see some medium-sized bubbles sitting on the surface of the liquid there, and the head just gets a little bit foamier the further up that you go. But yeah, I have to say, this is quite an impressive appearance with this beer. It's one of the paler New England hazies that I've come across in recent times, and it's also pretty soupy and gloopy. So remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few different things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts you put into the beer will affect its colour as well. But when it comes to different kinds of IPAs, you don't often have to care about that. But like I say, this one is one of the paler New Englands I've come across in recent times. Reminds me of a kind of peach or pineapple juice sort of colour. I love comparing the appearance of New England IPAs to different fruit juices, because, you know, that's just what they remind me of. But for an 8.1%, the level of haze in this beer, the soupiness and gloopiness is pretty damn impressive actually. So the level of haze in these kind of beers depends on the oak content, wheat content, and to a degree what yeast you use. But yeah, I've seen, you know, triples and quadruples that aren't this soupy and gloopy. So yeah, this is going to be quite interesting from that perspective. Not too much in the way of visible carbonation with this one, and yeah, just one or two bubbles kind of creeping up the side of the glass there. But you know, all in all, it looks very nice, this one, and pretty much in line with what you would expect of a New England IPA. So yeah, let's leave it at that for the appearance and go on and have a wee look at the aroma of this one then. I'm very, very curious to see what this beer is going to be like. Yeah, aroma-wise, it's very familiar, but it's really pretty damn good actually. It smells really, really nice. So, it gives you everything you'd want from the style. You've got that lovely big kind of smooth, creamy malty backbone that you'd expect of the New England IPA. You've got a lovely bright green component to it, and you've got that big soft juiciness. So as I've explained in many New England reviews before, for me there are 6 elements to think about when it comes to the malty and sort of yeasty side of this style. So you've got the kind of farmhousey yeasty type characteristics and the rye leaning grainy side of things. Those are a little bit more common in New England brewed New England IPAs, because the style really started off as farmhouse IPAs, but since the style has moved away from there and evolved, you've got wheaty bitiness, oaty creaminess, barley malt bread, and also the sweeter side of things, and most non-New England brewed New England IPAs lean toward that. For me, this one comes across as being really, really oaty, very, very smooth, and I think it's got a fair little bit of the barley malt character coming out in the aroma as well. But I think this is going to be a really soft, creamy, and quite juicy New England IPA, generally speaking, just from how the aroma is in this one. But yeah, aroma-wise, this beer is really, really nice. Let's just break it down then and describe the aroma for you a little bit more in depth. I'm very, very curious about this one. So yeah, the backbone of the beer is that lovely kind of fresh white bready bread crust there. So yeah, that lovely fresh white bready bread crust is in there. You can smell that nice little touch of woodiness that you get from these beers quite often. But yeah, there's Jacob's cream cracker in there, definitely. Maybe a tiny little touch of like a wholemeal brown bready character, slightly more grainy, but lots of fluffy white bread in there, definitely. And that's the barley malt side of things. But yeah, at the back of the nose, I'm getting a little bit of a wheaty bitiness in there, and you can smell that there's a slightly denser white bready character too. When it comes to things like wheat and oats, you do have to remember that they can vary a little bit depending on where they're from. So for example, European wheat is a little bit more bitey compared to American wheat, which is a little bit smoother. European oats are a little bit more creamy compared to American oats, which are a little bit more almost kind of porridgey, if you like. So this beer, it does have a little touch of wheaty bitiness in there, but you can smell that really smooth, dense, thicker kind of wheaty white bready note coming out of the beer. And yeah, on top of that, you're starting to get the oaty side of things as well. So the oaty side of the beer is the oaty side of the beer in this one for me is really nice and creamy. Actually, it shows a little tiny touch of dryness to it, but yeah, the oaty side of things is very, very creamy. I'd be very curious to know where they're getting their oats and wheat from, actually, at this brewery, because the wheat makes me think it's maybe North American wheat, but the oats actually are very, very creamy, like European oats as well. So I'd be very curious to see see who their suppliers are and things like that. But yeah, when it comes to the oatiness in New England IPAs, very often it can be a really good indicator, or a fair indicator I should say, of how fresh your New England IPA is. Essentially, the creamier the oaty side of the beer is, the fresher your New England IPA is, the drier they are, the older the beer is. Just a general thing there. It's very rough, but it's just something I've kind of found from experience. But yeah, the more that I smell of this one, the more the oats really come out of this one. And this beer doesn't have too much of a sweetness in the malty side of things. There's a little bit of that Werther's Original Butter Candy Butterscotch kind of coming out of it, and also just a wee touch of biscuit in there too. But yeah, the yeasty side of the beer at the back of the nose is quite bready as well. I would say little touch of sweet brown bread, a little bit of white bread, and a wee bit of cracker and things like that. But yeah, I think once we've said all of that, that covers pretty much everything we need to say about the malty and yeasty side of the beer, of course. But yeah, quite happy with the malty and yeasty side of things in this one. So let's go on to the hoppy part of this beer to round off the aroma. So as I've explained in IPA reviews before, there are 3 different types of hoppings that you can use. Early edition hopping, which takes place within the first hour of the wort ball, that gives you mainly bitterness and a deeper, danker aroma. You've got late edition hopping, which takes place within the last half hour of the wort ball, gives you a little bit of bitterness, mainly flavour aroma, and it contributes to a very bright green component. Then you've got dry hopping, which takes place after the wort ball is complete. That's all about flavour and aroma. And then you've also got a little bit, that mainly gives you quite a bright green component in terms of flavour and aroma as well. But yeah, the way that all kind of goes together in New England IPAs is quite interesting, because in New England IPAs you're going to get that softer, more juicy component because it relies mainly on late addition and dry hopping, whereas in West Coast IPAs you're getting that more deep dank sort of thing because it's it's got the early edition hopping in there as well. Brain's a bit tired today, guys. Apologies for that. So a little bit slow. But yeah, with this beer, the green component is very, very smooth actually. So that makes me think there's a little bit of like incognito or cryo or something going on in this one, which is I have seen with both Citra and Nelson Sauvin actually. But yeah, the green component in this one, there's a little tiny bit of earthiness in there. And the brightness of the green component tells you, yeah, very much late addition and dry hopping. The smoothness is what makes me think about incognito or cryo oil or something like this. But yeah, little touch of woodiness and herbal character in there, but mainly a nice bright floral aromaticity and a little bit of a kind of wet, leafy, sort of grassy character as well. So yeah, the way that all of that goes together in this one, I think is really, really nice. So yeah, lovely, kind of juicy green component to this beer, or leafy green component, I think, which is very nice. On the fruity side of things, this beer is pretty much what you would expect if you know these hops. There's a little bit of peachy sharpness in there from the Citra, of course. Big ripe juicy mangoes, soft apricot, nice little bit of pineapple as well. But I'd say the mango is the most dominant of the tropical notes in there. And then you've got that white, green, grapey, gooseberry sort of note, and a wee touch of lime, I would say. Yeah, wee tiny touch of lime from the Citra as well. But I'd say, yeah, it's the mangoes and the peach on top of that kind of white, green, grapey, gooseberry sort of thing that are kind of ringing true in this particular beer. But yeah, lovely, lovely aroma coming out of this one. So do take a little bit of time to savour that before you get stuck into the beer. But I think it's about time that we taste this one then and see what it's all about. So yeah, this is the City of Double Walk, an 8.1% New England Hazy Imperial, whatever you want to call it, IPA from Craft Bros Brewery in the Gimpo area of Seoul in South Korea. Let's get stuck into this one. Slanju, Skål, cheers, Gambe. Ooh. Yeah, that's really good. Yeah. First impression of this one, very soft, smooth, juicy New England Double IPA. This is one of these beers where the impression that the aroma gives is very in line with what you actually get out of the flavour of the beer. So yeah, I'm quite impressed with this one, I have to say. But yeah, I was impressed with the last beer that I tried from these guys as well, and the other one was a collaboration with Young Master, of course. But yeah, this is really pretty nice, in fact. So yeah, it gives you everything you'd expect of the style. I'd say it's got a little bit more wheaty presence to it than perhaps the aroma would have you believe, and then yeah, there is a wee touch of dankness in there, which isn't so obvious in the aroma as well. But other than that, everything that you'd expect of this beer from the aroma really shows itself. So let's do as we always do, and we'll break the beer down and describe it for you a wee bit more in depth. We'll start in the middle third of the palate then. Let's do it. So, middle third of the palate then. The backbone of the beer, you've got that soft, white bready bread crust forming the backbone of the beer. And it's like a kind of hedgehog, yeah, it's a sort of hedgehog roll type thing, I would say. As you move further forward on that middle third of your palate, you do of course get a little bit of woody character lying underneath, but then yeah, you've got a bit of Jacob's cream cracker in there, which is really, really nice. And then on top of that, there's a wee bit of like a wholemeal brown bready type character as well. So yeah, there's a little tiny touch of a wholemeal brown bready character in there, but pretty much the white bready character from the barley malt that sits on top of that, it sort of dominates the malty side of the flavour, and the white bread that's in there is actually quite fluffy but still quite dense in a way. So you've got this kind of fluffy density to it, which is nice, but the whole beer is just so smooth actually, which is kind of interesting. So yeah, the bread crust, a little bit of cracker, then a wee smattering of like brown bread, then it's the white bready barley malt layer, and on top of that you start to get the you get the wheaty side of the beer coming out. So above the kind of barley malt layer, you can feel that more dense wheaty white bready character, and further back on that middle third of the palate, you start to get you start to get a more wheaty, bitey character out of this one, which is nice. So as I've often said, sweeter flavours tend to come out further forward on the palate, more dry and bitter flavours come out further back, and the wheat in this one is showing you that. So that dense, wheaty, white bready character is a bit smoother further forward, but a little bit more bitey further back on the middle third of your palate. But above that wheaty layer, you start to get the oaty side of the beer. And so if you go down the middle line of your tongue, you can feel that nice, dense, creamy oaty character, and that spreads out toward the edges of the palate too. You can just feel a very, very slight oaty dryness there. at the edges of your palate. But like I said, this beer at the time of drinking, it's like 6 days in the can, so it's going to be very, very fresh. And as I say, very impressed that they could get the beer over here to Hong Kong in such a short period of time. But yeah, on top of the OT layer then in this one, you get that little circle in the middle third of your palate there, which has the kind of Werther's Original butter candy butterscotch sort of flavour to it. And that is of course the boozy side of the beer, and it's just surrounded by a little bit of that kind of that McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of character. So yeah, the way that all kind of pieces together is really, really nice as well. Yeah, so I think that's everything we need to say about the middle third of your palate, in all honesty. So let's go to the back third of your palate then. As I've often said, the back third of your palate will give you very similar flavours to the middle third of your palate, just at different intensities. But yeah, the border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get that nice little bit of bready build up in there. There's a wee bit of kind of brown bready character in the base, the white bready character on top, then a more dense wheaty note coming out of it. But then yeah, you've got the base of that back third of your palate there, which has the kind of brown bready bread crust. It's more of a brown bready bread crust in there, I would say. Then above that you've got a kind of Jacob's cream crackery note. Then the brown bready layer is there. That's got a little bit more presence on the back third of your palate, so it's a little bit lighter, taller and more airy. Then you've got the white bready layer, the barley malt white bready layer sitting above that, which is again is lighter, taller, more airy and slightly drier. Then the wheaty note sits above all of that, so the wheat is giving you that nice dense that nice dense white bready character there, and it has that wee bit more bitiness. And above everything else on that back third of your palate, you're starting to get the yeasty character in there. So let's have a little look at the yeasty flavours that this beer's giving you. So yeah, the yeasty side of this beer, for me, the yeasty side of this one, at its core, it has a little bit of that more, it's got a little bit of a kind of sweeter brown bready character to it. Then round the edge of it, there's a little bit more of a kind of grainy brown bread. Then it's surrounded by a more kind of bread crusty character as well. So yeah, the way that all of that kind of pieces together in this one is really quite nice. But that yeasty character kind of lingers there into the aftertaste a little bit, and it does promote some of the bread crusty sort of flavours from the beer as well. But definitely, yeah, back third of your palate, you can feel the flavour is taller. Then as you move further forward into the middle third of your tongue, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together that little bit more. So yeah, the way that all of that pieces together is really nice in this one. So yeah, the malty yeasty side of things in this beer is quite nice. A bit more yeasty and kind of wheaty leaning into the aftertaste, but yeah, you can feel it's quite oak forward and barley malt in the beginning. But yeah, let's go to the hoppy side of things then. So yeah, for me, the hoppy side of the beer, the green component is kind of what you'd expect, but I'm thinking there's maybe more pellets involved in this one because it just has that little bit more pungency, of course. But back corners of the palate, nice little bit of earthiness in there. As you move further forward, a little touch herbal, then you can feel there's a wee touch of like piney, resiny dankness to this one as you move further forward. But then yeah, as you reach the front corners of the palate, it's got that oily floral aromatic spice to it. Then round the front curve of the tongue, it's a little bit lighter and more grassy, of course. But yeah, nice oily character to the green component as well. So yeah, I like that with I do like that with this one. The green component is nicely done, so it gives you the wee bit of bitterness, but also the kind of smoothness that the aroma would have you think there. But let's go to the front third of the palate then, just to round off the flavour section of the video. So border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you get that nice little bit of bready build up in there. You can feel the brown bread in the base, the white bread on top, and then a wee bit of the more kind of wheaty, bitey kind of character out of this one. But the base of the front third of your palate, yeah, you've got the the bread crust, a little bit of the cracker, the brown bread, the white bread, then the more dense wheat, and then above that you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters kind of roll their way out of the beer. So yeah, let's have a wee look at that. Yeah, so the fruity side of this beer is really, really nice. For me, it's kind of what you'd expect if you know these hops, in all honesty, but you're getting a wee bit, you can feel there's a little touch of green to this beer, generally speaking, just because of how fresh it is. Maybe I should have let this one mellow enough for another week or something, but it's still really nice in the condition it is. It's been a while since I've had a New England IPA as fresh as this, actually. But yeah, the green component in this one, the oily bubble, at the back of that oily bubble, then there's a little touch of grapefruit in there, which is going to come from the citra, so you can feel that pungent grapefruit in there. But yeah, as you move further forward from that, there's a little bit of sharper peach in there, lots and lots of juicy, very, very ripe mango as well. And as you move further forward from that, there's like apricot. There's like apricot in the there's apricot in the base, and then more of like a pineapple-y note sitting above that. But then yeah, the front half of that front third of your palate is the front half of the front third of your palate is more to do with it's got more of a kind of white, green, grapey, gooseberry sort of note, which is what you'd expect from the Nelson Sauvin. And maybe there's a wee bit of a lemony, limey character just behind the very front tip of your tongue too. So yeah, I mean, if you know Citra and Nelson Sauvin, this beer isn't doing anything particularly surprising in the fruity part of its flavour. But yeah, all in all, I think this one goes together really, really well, and it's very, very fresh. So I do wonder, maybe I would get a wee bit more out of it if I let it sit for another week. But yeah, it's been cool to try something quite as fresh as this from South Korea. So yeah, I think that's everything we really need to say about the flavour of this one. Just a really well done New England Double IPA, and a slightly more, a good balance between the oat and the wheaty flavours. I think the more that I focus on I ponder over the flavour of this one, the more wheaty leaning this beer becomes. But yeah, let's round off the review then with a wee quick look at the mouthfeel. So yeah, for me, this beer, I would say top end of mid-bodied, bottom end of full-bodied. The carbonation is very, very smooth in this one. And it's quite an interesting beer because it does have that sort of creamy mouthfeel that you'd expect from the soupiness and gloopiness in the appearance, but also from the New England IPA style in general. But you do get a little touch of like slight oiliness and kind of cleanliness to this one, which is obviously just to do with the water. So that's an interesting point too. But in terms of the malty side of this beer, it's a wee bit dry underneath, smoother in the middle, and slightly kind of creamier with a drier sweetness on top. There's a wee bit of there's a wee bit of bitterness to this one, maybe 40 IBUs, which is, 30 is the standard for the New England IPA, but then when you go up to double, 40 and sometimes 50 are acceptable too. But then this beer is very fresh, so that it still has that little bit of kind of green to it that you get when the beers are so fresh. So yeah, maybe 40-ish IBUs I think is fair with this one. And then the fruity side of the beer is nice and soft and juicy as well. Leans a little bit more toward the citrusy side of things at the moment, I would say. But maybe again, as this beer gets a little bit older, you might get more of the kind of oiliness from the Nelson Sauvin. But all in all, another beautiful, beautiful beer from Craft Bros, and I look forward to going and visiting their bar in Surrey and Seoul at some point. So let's leave it at that for this one. This has been really nice to try. So once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Craft Bros Brewery as well. But this one was the City of Double Walk, 8.1% New England Hazy Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA from Craft Bros Brewery in Gimpo in Seoul in South Korea. Thank you for watching. Check out my social media, check out their social media, and I'll catch you guys again in another review very, very soon. Sláinte, skål, cheers, and gambe.